Hello, and welcome back to the Living Internet Alliance podcast. I'm your host, Jack Moses, and in this episode, I interviewed Dan Goldfield and Kimia Nora on a live X space on the intersection between spirituality and business. So, in this episode, we started with a guided meditative practice from Dan Goldfield and then went deep into some questions around content, branding, business building, offers, and spirituality in the creator economy and in the online business space. You can join our next live X space next Wednesday, December 17th at 9:30 a.m. Central for live opportunities to connect with the speakers from the Creator Economy Convention, ask questions, and give some insights related to the topic. To check out tickets for the Creator Economy Convention next June in Vancouver, as well as to join the free Circle community, check out the link below, thelivinginternet.com. Also, subscribe to this channel or favorite this podcast wherever you're listening for updates on the most recent episodes, and join us live next Wednesday, December 17th for the next Twitter space. Without further ado, let's hop right into this episode with Dan Goldfield and Kimia Nora. Good morning. Welcome to this Twitter space. Super excited for this one. We're going to be talking about a very pertinent topic in my awareness, and I believe where the creator economy is evolving towards, which is building and monetizing a spiritual business in the creator economy. So, oftentimes we come across people that are on either end of a spectrum here. So, on one end of the spectrum, you have the person who is very easily able to monetize and is very good at the practical game of business and is able to build a brand and make a full-time living from their online work and personal brand. But they lack the depth, they lack the spiritual component, and so they never truly evolve, they never go inwards, and they never build something that not only truly serves humanity, but serves their higher self and their highest evolution. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have the spiritual person who starts posting online, creating content, and building a personal brand, but finds it very hard to monetize their spiritual knowledge. So, what I want to talk about today, and we have some great guest speakers that are going to be able to give us some great insight here with Dan and Kimia joining the space. I'm very curious to talk about that intersection. How do you not only maintain a sense of true service and spirituality when building your brand and creating content, but how do you also make a full-time living from it? How do you also monetize it? So, we're going to hop into that discussion here in just a few minutes. We're going to start with a little meditation, being it that we have Dan and Kimia both present today, both very big into meditation themselves. And so Dan's already up here as a speaker. Kimia, I will invite you as a speaker. And yeah, would love to hop into this little meditation practice. I think it's a great idea. And from there, we'll hop into the discussion.
Wonderful. Let's enjoy a few moments together, friends. And as I know some of you are familiar with already, perhaps even everyone in the room here today, familiar with a lot of what I talk about here on X very often, which is that we don't need to be in a special posture to meditate. We don't need to choose a particular meditation object, although that can certainly be helpful if we have anyone listening in the future who's never meditated before, then indeed it can help to find your feet, so to speak, by doing something like a classical breath meditation. But what my first teacher taught me, who was a Theravada monk in Thailand, was that as soon as possible, if what we're looking for is freedom in life, happiness in life, clarity in life, wisdom in life, we want to take our practice off the cushion and apply it everywhere. Now, that might sound like a big thing to do. That might sound like a challenge. It might sound too good to be true. But it gets much easier when we realize we only have to do it once. ever. We only have to find a single moment of recognition of what's really going on. So we're not applying a technique here. We don't have to learn anything. All we're interested in is recognizing what's really going on. And so, friends, whether you're seated or standing, moving or still, whether your eyes open or eyes closed, just consider everything that's occurring right now. Don't feel that you have to reach for anything that's not included in whatever everything is like for you right now. And don't feel that anything that is occurring needs to be excluded. There may be discomfort in the body. There may be thoughts. There may be feelings that you don't particularly like. But this is all okay, and I'm going to tell you why. All of this that's occurring is occurring within a space. We can call that space many things. I like to call it awareness. Now, typically we make a distinction between what we call physical space and awareness. But that distinction is a mental process. Indeed, all distinctions are mental processes. Sometimes these mental processes are so habitual that they seem to be the way things are. But we can literally put the brain under all kinds of amazing technology and see that when we distinguish, neurons are firing, stuff is happening. It's a mental process. And we can learn to be without that mental process. When we do, we see everything as equal, given that it is occurring within a single basic space, known by that space, contained by that space, permeated by that space, and that space is, of course, the largest context we can imagine. Everything we've ever seen or heard or felt or thought has occurred within this space. Now, suddenly, those afflictive emotions, those intrusive thoughts, don't seem so big. And of course, another wonderful quality about this aware basic space is that it doesn't cling to anything that comes through it, nor does it try to grab at anything that's outside of it, nor is it ever affected by any of its contents, nor harmed, nor diminished. As we recognize this more and more, we see everything that occurs is coming and going by itself. We may have the experience of clinging to something. We may have the experience of wishing something were here that isn't here. But good news, that clinging, that wishing is also a mere appearance within this basic space. The more we recognize this, the more we deepen and stabilize this recognition, the more we see how unnecessary and harmful many of our ways of being are. Those intrusive thoughts, those afflictive emotions. Seeing how unnecessary and harmful these are, we stop giving them energy. When we stop giving them energy, they vanish on their own. They self-terminate, as is the nature of everything you've ever experienced, ever. So my hope is that you've been able to follow me along in this recognition, and that it has felt like even a 0.1% reduction in tension, in stress, in clinging, in wishing things were different. And this is a wonderful place from which to consider and act upon all of the wonderful stuff that we're going to talk about here today. What do you think, Jack?
I thought that was beautiful. Thank you, Dan. Honestly, I just kind of sat here with my eyes open, which is always interesting to do an eyes open meditation. And I was
Mm,
just, looking at my desk, looking at my computer, looking at this cup of coffee in front of me, and I was just like, wow, this is pretty cool. Like, this is
yeah.
my job in some
Yeah.
way, right? Like, I get to sit here in this cozy little chair and like it's snowing outside, and I'm on my computer playing a video game essentially like I used to play as a kid. And
Uh-huh.
it's all quite similar. So I appreciate that zoomed out perspective, Dan. That was awesome.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. And this appreciation just occurs naturally the more we relax, right? I know many of our friends in the room have experienced this. The more we relax, the more these natural qualities like appreciation just occur naturally. We don't have to do anything to try to cultivate them. This is who we are.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dan. I want to take a minute to welcome Kimia into the space. Kimia, how are you doing today?
Hi guys. Thanks for having me today. It's really awesome to connect with some of my friends here and also meet some new people. Um, yeah, I mean, this is my favorite topic to talk about, the um, building a spiritual business in the creator economy. And it's a topic that personally, I relate a lot to it because when I first started about a year and a half ago, that was kind of where I was. I was, somebody who was deeply spiritual, who had a regular spiritual practice for nearly a decade prior to me deciding to write on X. And I wanted to exclusively write about these deeper understandings and knowings and you know experiences that I've had in life that have been so profound and life changing, but I wasn't quite sure how to address it. I wasn't sure if people are going to relate to the work that I do, or the things that I'm going to talk about, because after all, like spirituality is a very broad topic, and there's so many different tastes and textures within that world. And so the problem I was facing was, how do we make this practical? How do we make spirituality, like these practices, very useful? um and and that's how I kind of ended up, gravitating more towards science, even though, the fundamental principles are the same. But now I had to find the language um, that more people would relate to, and the language that would give me more credibility as a educator and as a speaker. Um, so yeah, that's where things have diverged thus far. And I've met so many other people who have been kind of on a similar path, like yourself, Jack, and Dan. We all kind of come from a similar sort of intention background. Um, so yeah, it's been incredible also meeting this community and making friends on the path as well.
Awesome. We're super excited to have you here, and I'm excited to learn more from you and hear more about your perspective on this space. And you've had, from my perspective, a lot of success in the space, like only being on Twitter for a year, year and a half, and you've grown a pretty substantial audience. And from my understanding, have launched various different products and services. So I think you have a lot of insight to share with all of us listening now and everybody that's listening later on the podcast. For those people that maybe are listening later on the podcast, or even the people in this space who maybe don't know you so well, could you give us a little bit of a backstory, a little bit of an intro, how you actually like stumbled upon this path, how you started writing about everything you're writing about now on Twitter, and what that journey has been like for you?
Yeah, so writing has always been a very special thing to me. I've always, ever since I was a child, I loved writing, but I never pursued my intuitive desire to become a great writer. It's almost like I never believed that it's a worthy pursuit. Um, and later on, I regretted not having pursued writing like professionally. Like I could have been writing a long time ago. As soon as you have the curiosity, the interest, you should pursue it. But at the time, social conditioning is that, oh, you should only pursue things that are, degrees that have a future, uh, lines of work that are going to make money in this economy. And writing is generally not considered one of those. But I had a deep passion for writing, and I had written a couple of different things. I had written a short story that got published in a book. Actually, the book is about meditation, and then I started writing on Substack. Oh no, not Substack, on Reddit, like anonymously. And every time I wrote, my content would just go massively viral in whatever subreddit I was in, and people would compliment my writing. And then it was right around that time that I came across, through the algorithm on YouTube, came across Dan Co. And I saw one of his videos, and he said there's only one skill you need to make it. There's only one skill you need. And I'm like, okay, what is this one skill? So I click on a video, I watch the whole video, and then he's talking about writing, how writing is this significant thing, how it's the language of the internet, how you can essentially create a universe of ideas for people, for other people on the other side to come and enjoy and learn and explore, right? And that was a profound idea to me, because I was the type of person who had a lot of unique perspectives and had experienced a lot of unique things in life, and I really wanted to share them. And I wanted to share them from like a creative perspective, not just say what everybody else is saying, but really really kind of pull what's like the felt sense of like my nervous system, almost like just pull it out in writing and share it with people through the internet. And so that was it. That was the video I watched, and then immediately I started just taking following Dan's instructions, like how to write online, and I kind of focused on it for I would say a year or so, and I got really good at writing online, and I was experimenting initially to see essentially what ideas kind of people connect with. And also, I was trying to find a trend to follow, or like find a niche to essentially claim. But the more I wrote, the more I noticed that, oh, like I am the trend. Like the niche that I'm looking for really is myself. These ideas, I started writing about, and then more people started connecting and to these ideas, and then more people started writing about different perspectives on what I was writing about. So my sort of, again, that spark of curiosity that initiated um, a trend of its own in the Twitter like health space. So I doubled down on what I knew best, and I just kept writing about, the some of the more um, yeah, I started writing about that. Um, I started to converge what I knew with more of the cutting edge science that's coming out. Um, and it's so far, it's been going great. There's more things that we're doing and are really excited about in this space. Um, yeah, and it, the beautiful thing about effort is it tends to compound on itself. So in the short run, you don't know what your curiosity and your natural interests are going to get you. But when you continuously follow that curiosity, it'll get to like a point of critical mass where, all the effort that you've put behind it kind of pays off in a natural way. So, so yeah, that's where we're at now.
Amazing. Yeah, it's funny how I would say probably all of us in here in some form or fashion came into this space through Dan Coe. And Dan Coe is kind of that intersection for me between personal development. I didn't know to call it spirituality at the time, but personal development and business. And I want to tie this conversation full circle to business through the mechanism of writing and content to start. So, you touched on writing, you've seen the power of writing, you've seen the power of sharing your ideas, the ability to go viral, the ability to bring new people into your sphere of awareness. And so, if we break down like what is business from first principles, like how do you actually run a business? It's really two things. It's traffic and offers, right? You need people and you need something to sell to people. You need something to serve people with. And so most of the time, people are stuck on, well, you could say both ends of the equation, but usually they have one side of the equation, but the other side is lacking. So they're really good at content, but they don't really get offer creation and product creation. Or they build some amazing product or software, but they can't figure out how to get eyeballs to it. So if your business is not where you want it to be, look at this equation. Business equals traffic plus offers or traffic times offers and see where you're lacking. So if we know that traffic, people come from content, and we're all here on Twitter as primarily writers, even though we're doing a space right now, which is speaking, but it's all content, it's all communication. I would love to know about your guys' writing process, specifically Kimia and Dan. And if anybody else wants to jump in, feel free. But I would love to know about your writing process. Like, what does it look like? Like, how often do you write? What do your writing blocks look like? How do you kind of systemize content? How do you delineate between this is a tweet versus this is a thread versus this is a newsletter? I guess I would just be curious to know, what is it like for you to sit down at the computer and start writing? Or do you write on your phone, or do you write when you're on a walk, or what does the process look like for you?
You want to go, Kimia, or shall I take it?
You can go. I'll go after
Okay,
you.
you can go after me. Great. My process has been one of experimentation, Jack. I've played with everything from rigid structure to total spontaneity. These days, I tend to float between the two, depending on what the project is, and the project is determined by my offer. So I've ended up in this kind of symbiotic flow between how am I trying to serve people? What's the best way to do that? What's the best way to communicate that I can do that? And I suppose if I were to zoom out even further, what begins the process is compassion. I'm waking up, I'm thinking, how can I help people? I'll never forget Dan, who we've been talking about, said in either in his content or in one of his courses or both, that he keeps a running note called "Who Can I Help the Most?" Well, I've kept that running note ever since, but it's kind of internal. Sometimes I'll jot something down, but it's something that I'm really contemplating all the time. Who can I help the most? Who can I help the most? And I've really enjoyed the work of Seth Godin on this as well, who in his book, This is Marketing, asks some very powerful questions right there at the top regarding what's the change that I'm seeking to make in the world? That's the first question, in fact, verbatim. What's the change I'm seeking to make? Once we've got that, then we can go to who needs it. I'm paraphrasing here. And then how am I going to get it to them? So we're beginning from the bottom of the funnel, if you like, in business speak. But we're not making the error of, hey, let me build something amazing and then hope that people come. Rather, it's this kind of flowing between all of those steps, all of those stages, in such a way that your offers are informing your content. And in reverse, the response to your content can also inform your offers. So to kind of ground all of that, what that looks like for me at the moment is I wake up, I get to my computer within 15 minutes. And currently I'm working on an Obsidian Vault, which is a new idea for me, which will hold some deeper content for folks who have already enrolled, folks who have already raised their hand and said, yeah, I want to be involved in this. I'm interested. This is quite different, of course, to top of funnel content. But what I've found is one of my favorite ways to work is I'll go into that deeper thinking. From that, simpler ideas will emerge. I can then translate from that deeper level of thinking to a quote shallower level, something that's more appropriate for social media, and I'll roll from there. And that may look as simple as I'm writing a deeper piece, I bold a sentence because I really want to emphasize it, and then I'll take that over to Twitter and I'll maybe change the wording a little bit so that it's more easily understood by folks who are not enrolled, and that's a tweet. Maybe a newsletter comes out somewhere in the middle, but that's pretty much the process at this point.
I love it. And you actually bring up a quite similar approach to the one that I take. And then I want to pass it over to Kimia, but I wanted to touch on what you said for a second here, Dan. And my process is quite similar through all this iteration. And I've been writing now for like 3 years in this space. And the approach that I've found works best for me is starting the morning at the deepest part of the funnel in business speak or at the deepest content that I can write. So to start the day, and I've been super busy with, college and football and all this stuff. So it hasn't been every single day like I would ideally like it to be. But in an ideal morning, I start with a book. I start by writing a book. From that book, I slowly come up to the surface in terms of opening myself to the world. And this is advice that I've given to clients that want to build personal brands is start in the morning with your deepest pieces of content. If it's a book, if it's an ebook, if it's writing a course, start at the deepest part and then slowly bring yourself up to the surface. So if I had to discern it into different work blocks, it would be like work block one is the book, the deepest thing I can write. Work block two is the newsletter, next deepest thing. And then work block three is social media content. And once I actually write the social media content and post it, then I will turn my phone off airplane mode. I'll take it out of the drawer and I'll actually open myself to conversation and connection on Telegram and Twitter and wherever else. But I really love that process of starting at the deepest thing you can create or write and slowly opening yourself to the world or coming up to the surface because oftentimes as you said in those deeper writing blocks when you're working on the long form piece when you're working on the ebook when you're working on a book or a course ideas are going to come in those little in those writing sessions that then can be cross multiplied onto social media versus if I try to start with social media content and then try to get into a course or a book later, it's hard to switch that focus because now not only have I already been on social media and I'm probably distracted and I'm probably already in conversations and talking to people, but my mind is um, it's more easily distracted. And so going deep at the start of the day and then slowly coming up has been the process that's worked best for me. So it's really cool to hear you say that. And it makes me excited to like get back into that process. in a few days. I have 2 days of school left. Long story, another time. But Kimia, I want to hear from you. What is your writing process like?
Yeah, thanks, guys. So I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I'm not completely proud of my writing process, but I'll tell you guys a little bit about some of the mistakes I've made within this writing journey. Um, so initially, when I started, it was all about, growing on social media, and because that's how you can get people to that's how you can test your ideas. Do people even want to hear about this? Is this useful content? So initially it was all about going viral, and then once I cracked that code, um I was growing really fast, or I was able to grow really fast by just writing one Twitter thread. So, one of the Twitter threads I wrote, it got me like 9,000 followers in 24 hours. So, I've written about 4 or 5 Twitter threads to have this many followers. Um, and most of my followers have come from, threads. And I made a huge mistake along the way, was that I didn't write more threads for myself, and I wrote it for other brands who were, I was helping them grow their brands and market their products, and I was very successful with them. I grew some of these brands to, like, I think 50,000 or so, or like 70,000 or so followers in less than a year. So I should have been doing that for myself along the way, but I was a bit of a perfectionist, and I was a bit of I had never had a bad track record. Like, I had almost never had a flopped thread. And from a creative perspective, that's a really bad thing, because that means you're so afraid of failure that you don't allow yourself to produce anything that flops. So I was stuck in that phase of, like, um I wasn't allowing myself to just experiment. So, and then later, Nikita changed the algorithm for Twitter, and absolutely no threads were going viral. So all the skills of going viral on X I had acquired were basically like completely useless at this point. At least on Twitter, the fundamental principles can be applied to any form of content. So this was the mistake I did. I focused on cracking the code on Twitter, which I did, but I didn't focus on, for example, producing some really high quality long form newsletters, which are basically like really, really valuable pieces of content, much more valuable than if you were to write a Twitter thread. Because if that newsletter is substantial, you can turn it into a YouTube series, right? You could turn it into a book. You could turn it into so many things. And again, like you said, Jack, like, the deepest content is the most important form of content, and that's why you want to focus on that. So that's how it started, and how it's going now is, now I'm more focused on the deeper forms of content. I'm uh, I'm planning on going to Substack and basically cracking the code for that platform, and really focusing on those longer form, deeper, and more substantial pieces of content.
Nice. I'm excited to see you on Substack because I think we could all say the same. I really enjoy your Twitter content, and it's like these bite-sized pieces of wisdom. I would love to go deeper, and I imagine a lot of people would feel the exact same way. So that's really exciting. I also think it's super valuable to hear you say at the beginning, like, I'm not proud of my writing process, or like, it's not where I want it to be, because people will see you from an outside perspective and say, damn, like she's going viral like every time she tweets. She has 40K followers. Like, she's crushing it. She must have this whole system and process absolutely dialed. But in reality, once you actually kind of step into it, like, you don't have to be perfect. And I think that's a really important insight for new writers, new creators. I would say there's every single person in the creator space probably could take their game to the next level. Nobody is 100% dialed, nobody is 100% disciplined all the time. But the most important thing is just showing up every single day. And it's something we talked about a lot in the last space with Nick Sweeney is creating that momentum from just showing up every single day, being in the arena, meeting people, and from there it really compounds. Now, we talked a little bit about traffic. We talked a little bit about writing. I would like to shift into the offer side of the equation. So, of course, to actually monetize a brand in general, especially a spiritual brand, you need an offer. You need something to serve people with. You need a product to give to people. So, I'll start with this question. Did you guys approach the offer creation process from the perspective of, I know my offer and I'm going to write content around my offer? Or did you just start to write and create content and then the offer emerged later on as clarity emerged?
I would say it's gone all of the which ways that we could imagine for me. I came online mid 2022, which I think was about the same time as you did, right, Jack? We were talking about that the other week.
Yep.
Um, and to begin with, it was just content. It was 6 months of content. And like you mentioned, Kimia, I was really concerned with how am I gonna communicate my knowledge in such a way that people are interested in it, people want it, people understand it, that it has some appeal. The biggest challenge for me in this whole space has always been precisely that. How do I package my knowledge in such a way that it survives the attention marketplace? Certainly, when I'm there at my computer first thing in the morning, I am not thinking in terms or writing in terms that do well on social media. And it would be fair to say I'm rarely writing in terms that really do well on social media, you know, compared to folks who are really nailing the traffic game, nailing the social media game. This has always been the struggle for me. I'm much more comfortable in those deeper waters. That said, during those initial 6 months, I learned a lot. I was hanging out with Dan Coe in his communities and figured out enough to get my first 10K launch done at that 6 month mark. And that was a life changing moment for me. Not only did I launch a cohort course for 10K, but I also, through the process of promoting that, landed my first high ticket coaching client, who was an AI founder in Pakistan. He alone replaced my music teaching income in one fell swoop. So I closed my music teaching business, in which I'd been earning $40 an hour for 20 years or something, struggling along like most musicians do, and never looked back. What I found following that was that actually 90% of my revenue from that moment on was from one-to-one clients. And I found through a long process of trial and error that it was much easier for me to connect with people, to sell to people, to serve people one to one than it was going one to many. I tried a few one to many offers, never cracked it. One to one, I was able to create. Now, subtext here is I was studying offer creation this whole time, right? I was studying Dan's content. I was studying the famous Hormozy book, $100 million offers. I was in Seth Godin, and I did put together probably dozens of forgotten one-to-one offers, one-to-many offers that maybe never left my Obsidian vault, that maybe I spoke to a few people about, that maybe I went as far as trying to promote. What I found was every time I wrote down a one-to-one offer and then actually offered it to someone, the offer changed. So the phrase in military strategy is a battle plan never survives contact with the enemy. The phrase in education is a lesson plan never survives contact with the student. And I was finding that in the conversations that I was having with people who had a genuine need for what I can do, there would always be some really good reason to adjust. So in the end, I just stopped writing down offers and I started instead focusing on the conversation that I was having with people and essentially creating bespoke one-to-one offers on the fly. And I've sold those for everything from $3,000 to $24,000. So it really worked. Right now, I'm swinging back towards I've always really wanted to try to crack the one to many thing for the simple reason that I don't want my knowledge locked behind a $3,000 plus price tag. I actually started this journey teaching for free. I taught my first student in 2018, and I was teaching for free for a long while before I figured, well, I just can't. I can't make. I've got to have a job if I do that. So I can only ever reach so many people. I'm bottlenecked. There's all kinds of wonderful reasons why spirituality has been taught for free over the millennia. It's not a great fit for our modern context. So I started a business and went ahead and, really figured it out. But I've always wanted to return to a lower price point so that more people can get the help that they need. So right now, that Obsidian Vault that I mentioned that I'm writing, that's part of a new plan, a whole value ladder in business speak. If any of you are familiar with Russell Brunson, where I'm starting to try to open up some different tiers, some different price points. This has really been an ongoing project and an ongoing contemplation for me over this whole 3.5 year period of how I can make that work, offering things at different price points without spreading myself too thin. And this is, of course, a question that's on the mind of every solo creator. If we want to be able to offer many things to many people, how do we do that in such a way that we're not spread too thin, that we are indeed still providing the service that people deserve? And we can dive into what that value ladder looks like if you like, Jack, but we'll leave it here for now.
Yeah, I would like to dive deeper into one aspect of this particularly, and then we'll transition it over to Kimia. But I'm curious, Dan, and I think a big pain point for people that are in the spiritual business space, the guidance space, the one-on-one coaching space, where you do thrive on that intimacy and you want to work with people one-on-one, is how do you find these people, right? Like, how do you find the people that need your help, or how do they
Yeah.
find you?
Yeah. So obviously the one word answer is content, but that's a bit thin, right? I love that equation that you gave earlier, brother, because it's so simple, right? And we can zoom out to that level and we can say, hey, if there's not enough people, I need to do content, I need to generate traffic, and if I've got nothing to sell them, I'm not going to make any money. For me, specifically, what has worked to bring some of those clients in is very specific CTAs, calls to action, on the X timeline. And this is the kind of post that many creators are scared to make because it's not an engagement post, right? If we're still caught up in vanity metrics, we're going to struggle to make this kind of post because the whole point is that it's not for everyone. If we're selling a high ticket one-to-one service that is intimate, that is intensive, it's supposed to not be for everyone. If we try to make that kind of service for everyone, we're going to struggle. And besides, if we do really well, we're going to be, our calendar's going to be full and we're going to have more clients than we can handle. So it's supposed to be exclusive from both sides of the equation. So I have written several very targeted, very specific call to action posts with a testimonial underneath. And this is quite a classic format for online coaches. I'm not sure how well it would do in today's X algorithm. I mean, at least some people saw it, enough people saw it for me to get a few buyers. The conversion rate on these was extraordinarily high. The last time I was doing this, for a period of, I guess, a year. I was at something like a 90% conversion rate. I think I converted 9 out of 10 people, or 19 out of 20, or whatever it ended up being, 18 out of 20, which suggests that what I had done is cultivated an audience that was pre-selected, an audience that was interested in what I was writing first and foremost, and that had a genuine need for the kind of help that I can provide. And this is, of course, a long-term game, right? This is, at that time, I would have been on X for a minimum of 2 years, posting every day on Spaces, talking to people, making connections. And this is where we get to this idea of brand, right? Of building up a kind of social equity over time. I remember, bringing it back to where we all started with our man Dan Coe. I was watching Dan's stuff for 6 months to a year before I actually enrolled. And I think this is a common experience for buyers. Many people who take a course of coaching with me, they've been familiar with me for a long, long time. I'm 3.5 years in at this point, and I've known coaches who have been in the game even longer who will say someone's been reading, watching their content for up to 10 years sometimes before they enroll. And all of that time is you're building trust. What I loved about Dan was he was demonstrating that he was consistent with his ideas. He was demonstrating, in another way of speaking, that he's not a charlatan. He stands by what he says. He really believes it. He demonstrates it in the way that he carries himself. We want to see that in people, right? And of course, social media gives us a unique opportunity to do this. No longer are we trusting an educational institution whom we don't know to qualify someone for us. We're qualifying them ourselves, and we can take as long as we like to check someone out, follow them over time, and see that they are who they say they are. This is going to happen for anyone who steps out into this space. Very rare that you'll have someone who comes across a single post of yours and signs up the following day, although it does happen. It happened to me recently, but most often people will take some time. And the other part of this is they may not have, someone reading may not have a need for what you offer to begin with, but then 2 years down the line, suddenly something in their life changes, and they go, I know, oh, I need to speak to Jack, I need to speak to Kimia, right? Because they know what you're about. A problem comes into their life that they know you can solve because they've been reading your content on it for years. And so at that point, the pre-selection is so high, the person already trusts you, and that's what can lead to something like a 90% conversion rate.
I love it. I love many ideas in there, and I think a few key things you said there that I wanna highlight are the posts that sometimes lead to a client or a conversion are not the posts that go viral. Sometimes they can be, right? And it depends what kind of game you're playing. Like if you're playing the virality game and you're playing the traffic game and you want a really big audience, it might make more sense to have more leveraged offerings on the back end, right? Like one to many asynchronous digital products, etc. But if you're playing the one to one game, it really doesn't matter if your posts get 3 likes, right? Because if the right person sees it at the right time, it's much more important than going viral. And I've experienced this myself. Like, I've been posting a lot more YouTube videos recently. And in the summer, I was literally just setting up the camera, which was my phone, and just talking for 20, 30 minutes about whatever was most present in my awareness at that time. And some of those videos got 50 views, 60 views, 70 views. But out of the people that watched it, somebody came to me and was like, "Dude, like, I love what you're talking about. Like, do you do coaching?" And I'm like, "I don't really have like a guidance coaching offer right now. It hasn't been my focus, but like I'd be open to it." And he's like, "All right, like how much does it cost? Like I'm ready." And I found that very interesting because when we're selling more personalized one-on-one coaching containers, it's not as much about what we're teaching, but it's more about the frequency that we're emitting, right? People are paying for the coach, not necessarily the content. People are paying to tap into your frequency rather than your knowledge. And of course, you're going to transmit the knowledge in the coaching container. But the most valuable aspect of a coaching container, in my experience, both as the coach and the student, because I've worked with a handful of spiritual coaches in the space one on one as a student, is the ability to tap into their energy, the ability to tap into their frequency for an hour and just have that be transmitted and have that space be held. And I'll circle back full circle here to a point about consistency is if we're all like basically radio broadcasting systems or signals, and getting clients is dependent upon people tuning into that right channel on their radio at the right time, which is just your unique expression, your authentic frequency, it's gonna be really hard for people to find that channel, find your frequency amongst the millions of people creating content online if you only post once a week, if you only are sharing once a month. But if you have that consistent frequency being emitted every single day where people know, "Okay, I can go to Jack's YouTube and he's gonna post something new every single day," I am fucking with his frequency, I'm resonating with his frequency. Now the odds that people find that and stay attuned to it and become almost obsessed with what you're writing, what you're speaking about, become much higher when you're being consistent. So it all kind of comes full circle. And I really appreciate the nuance there, Dan, of, you don't have to have a huge audience. You don't have to go viral to monetize a coaching business, although it can be helpful and it can be a very powerful way to play the game. And I think that's a good transition into Kimia because Kimia has gone viral, as she said, many different times. So I'm curious, Kimia, if you are open to sharing, like, what are your current offerings? What are your current product stacks? What have you offered in the past? And how did writing viral content kind of bring people into your offers or your ecosystem?
Yeah, Jack. Initially, when I first started writing on X, I always wanted to talk about the same thing. It was about I was talking about the mind body connection, from the beginning. Um, because I had one of the questions that basically Dan was asking us was, where have you been in the past? In what ways have you changed your own life? And how can you, how they say, uh, you're in your strongest to offer something when it's something you have done for yourself. It's a transformation that you have been through yourself. So, I took one of the greatest transformations that I've had in life, and I wanted to offer that. And, I used to, a few years back, I was semi disabled with chronic pain and other symptoms that I had developed when I was younger. But again, I was at a point where it was the worst it had ever been, and I was kind of not very functional. I was not able to live at my best. And through this through these newer and more sort of emerging therapies of neuroplasticity and working with the emotions and essentially learning how to regulate our autonomic nervous system that's causing all these symptoms that was causing all these symptoms for me. That was like the most profound science I had ever encountered. That was very practical, and it was like Western science. It was, originally the yogis were talking about that like 100 years ago. But now it was like Western science. Now that was like real clinical stuff, backing it up. And it was the greatest sort of transformation I had. So I wanted to essentially share the same thing when I started. And so I started writing content, and then the more I wrote, the more I actually realized that this is something I can offer. This is something that people want and they're interested in. It's a unique solution to a very real problem that, historically we haven't had a lot of solutions for. So I started to dive deeper into neuroplasticity. I started to study with some clinicians who've been researching this for like several decades, and then I started to offer it. The more I wrote about it, the more I noticed that people would come to me with questions, and I would start offering people. Actually, that happened to me as well. One of the first ever mind body or neuroplasticity coaching clients I ever had, it was just like somebody who found me on X and reached out to me and said, "Hey, like I have IBS, I have GERD, I have all these symptoms. I've done all the tests. Like I'm a dentist myself. I have a really good understanding of biology. Like there's nothing physically going on with my gut, but I have all these symptoms." So I get on a call with him, I tell him what's going on, and then I tell him, this is all coming from John Sarno, who was this physician 40 years ago who came up with this very radical theory into chronic pain. And that theory ended up being very successful to the point that 40 years later, right now, it's causing this sort of paradigm shift in medicine. And paradigm shifts in science take a long time. Usually, like, thinking about like Galileo Galilei, it took 150 years after his accurate calculations for them to become um, worldwide accepted among the scientific community. So, we are at the beginning stages of this paradigm shift. And I noticed this, and I noticed that, oh my God, there is a movement happening. And, I'm really well versed in this world. And I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to offer this service. I wanted to offer this neuroplasticity based transformation to people. And then, so this client, yeah, that was, he just reached out to me, and we got on a call, and I told them, like, yes, I can help you with this. I can help you with your IBS. And we only got on a call, like, we only got on 3 coaching calls. And I helped him, I taught him how to rewire his brain. I mean, literally, I taught him how to rewire his brain because his brain is inducing, these symptoms of IBS and GERD. And he told me this is the best he's felt in 6 years. He said, my IBS, he said, I can't believe it. Like, it's just getting better every day. He said, I took a nap while lying down for the first time in 6 years because he couldn't lay flat on his back because of the GERD. So that was the very first time. Again, it was just a random person. I wasn't even promoting this offer. It was just somebody who saw my content and had read a book of John Sarno. And he said, I've read the book. I just didn't know how to apply it. Right. And my work is in the field of applied neuroscience. We're teaching people how to apply this regulated, how to regulate their autonomic nervous system, essentially. And then once that happened, I started to work with more people. I started to uh, sort of open doors to one-on-one clients, and then later I started to talk to some of these MDs who are doing this work, who have a neuroplasticity focused medical practice, and I asked them to be my medical advisors, and I and I kind of gathered a team of medical professionals and also other neuroplasticity practitioners like myself. So I created this community. It's a 12-month sort of subscription where you have access to all the neuroplasticity material. You could DIY it and go through that yourself and learn how to apply these methods into your life. And also we are the other offer that I'm working on with my team. Um, we're actually aiming to launch it, open doors, launch it in a couple months. And we are doing a sort of white glove neuroplasticity treatment. It's a 10-week long cohort. You get access to these physicians who are, some of the best doctors in America because of this unique set of knowledge that they have. And we are able to basically help people with some really debilitating symptoms. Two of the people that I talked to this week, one of them has fibromyalgia and CRPS, which are known as some of the most painful chronic conditions in the world. And also the other person I spoke to who's joining our program, he has had TBI for 14 years, so a traumatic brain injury. And these are the things that we can address, and we can do it online. We don't have to see people physically because neuroplasticity training is actually a lot like fitness training. In neuroplasticity, like we are doing these physical exercises with the brain. So it's like fitness or like physical therapy for the brain, for the limbic system. And it can all be done online, and we're really, really excited about it. I'm really excited about it as like kind of the founder behind it. So at this point, this is what the majority of my content is going to be about.
Incredible. That sounds amazing. Um, would you want to quickly tell people where they can find that?
Yeah, so it's I do have a website for the community, but I don't have a website for the upcoming cohort yet. That's in the making, but it's primarily through my newsletter. Um, and then you get emails about the programs and like where to sign up if that's something you're interested in. And you can always also DM me if you have any questions about this particular work and if it can be applied to your specific circumstances. But yeah, so for me, from a technical side of things, and like a funnel side of things, I think I need to be doing some work on that, some more making the funnel more efficient so people can find our offer more easily.
Yeah, that's kind of this intersection, right? Like playing the game of business while also keeping the intentions pure. And if you have the offer that you're already seeing is transforming people's lives, it's actually a disservice to people to not optimize your business in the best way. That's been a big paradigm shift for me. Um, but yeah, I mean, the stuff you're doing, it kind of breaks my preconceived notions of what's possible in the space. And something that I've seen, especially with beginners that come into my programs or communities, is they think they need to have a certification to be a qualified coach, or they need a certification to be a qualified life coach or guide or teacher. Or even for what you're doing, Kimia, it's like on the surface, it seems like you would need to be a doctor or like have a doctorate to do this type of work. But I think both of you, Kimia and Dan, are examples of like, you don't need any certification. You don't need any special title to actually impact people and change people's lives. So I would love to hear your perspectives on that because I think it's something that people get quite caught up in and hung up on is saying, yeah, like I'm not going to start creating content yet or like really trying to build my brand and business because I want to go get this 6 month certification first that's going to cost $10,000, $20,000 and then I'll be qualified to teach. I personally don't see it that way, but I would be curious to hear your guys' perspectives on that.
Yeah, we love to get permission don't we, as human beings? But it's all arbitrary. All of these establishments, these institutions that have come up over time to certify people, of course, there's function there. We're not saying it has no use, but these are all made up. These all came from nothing, and yet we place such heavy importance on it. There are other ways for us to do peer review if we need to, if there's a safety issue or whatever. Now, of course, this depends upon the integrity of the practitioner. Anyone can come out online and start lying about their ability to help people. And in the past, maybe those folks have made some money and some people have got burned. Nowadays, we're all aware of this stuff on the internet, and that's why people tend to watch people, like I was talking about previously, to qualify them, right? So the qualification is A, in does the person who's receiving what you're putting out think that you can do what you say you can do, and B, have we done it for people before? Now, in the beginning, of course, like we were talking about previously, you may only have done it for one person thus far, and that might be yourself. So one of the other great lessons we all took from Danco, isn't it, was start where you are. Start where you are. If the only person that you've helped is yourself, maybe help someone else for free, or see if you can help someone else for free. My first student, who I mentioned earlier on, was actually my mother. She attempted suicide back in 2017, 2018. And the only way I could think of to help her was to teach her what I'd been learning from this monk I'd been studying with in Thailand. So I did, and it helped. And so she was my first student. And then that teacher of mine gave me authorization to teach. My second student was my cousin, who'd been on antidepressants for 14 years. We had one conversation. 3 weeks later, she called me up and said, I'm done. I flushed them all. I'm back in the gym. Work is great. That was it. She's never had a spot of depression since. When we start to see this stuff, which goodness knows I tried lots and lots of things before that, but when we find something that finally works, and we're getting results in other people, that is the qualification. If we're helping people, that is our qualification. Now, of course, we're not talking about cutting people open and performing surgery, right? We're talking about non-invasive work, the qualification for which is the results. And goodness knows we've all had experience with practitioners who do have certificates who do a shitty job. So we know that a certificate is not a foolproof measure of someone's capability to help. So that's my advice to people, exactly like yourself, Jack, is can you get the result? Can you help someone? If you can't, trial and error, experimentation until you can, and then replicate the result. Goodness, I mean, I guide a lot of people in business as well. And of course, the hardest thing is to get started, right? The hardest thing is to find that first person to help. I hadn't even thought about this for a long time, but I was just speaking with a client the other week where I recalled that I was between 2018 and 2022, I was teaching for free. 4 years of experience figuring this stuff out before I ever went public with it and took $1. I was keeping up with my old job in the meantime. Now, many would say, and they'd likely be right, that I could have done it sooner. But for better or worse, I took that 4 year period to gain the experience. And maybe that's why I've been able to be successful in a relatively short amount of time out here. It wasn't a struggle for me to start to find paying clients, because when people came through and had an initial conversation with me, it was obvious to them that I could help. I'd already been helping people, right? So we can make it very, very simple. Trial and error, experimentation until we find some way of helping people, then replicate that, get as much experience as you feel you need, and then just start talking about that experience. Of course, there's a lot of kind of technicalities, practicalities in that. You need to learn how to write content, you need to learn how to speak to a camera, you need to learn how to actually communicate that benefit. But the benefit is the hardest part, right? We can all come out and start creating content. Goodness knows there's a lot of huge creators out there who have nothing to sell, and they're like, well, I did the 100,000 followers thing. Why aren't I rich? Well, we need to have some deeper value to give. That's the harder part. That's the part that usually takes people a 5, 10, 15-year journey to establish. Once we've got that, the rest is easy by comparison.
Yeah, and it's what I love about this space in general is if you've had a personal transformation in your life, you can make a living from that. You can make a full-time living from your personal transformation. And I know probably hundreds of friends who are working normal jobs who have had personal transformations. And if they were aware of this space, that, oh shit, like I went on a fitness journey and I lost 50 pounds and now it's just how they live their life. But if you've gone on that type of transformation, if you've done mental health work, if you've um, recovered from social anxiety or binge eating or lack of confidence or whatever it is, you have the credibility and skill set to teach somebody else that because you've done it yourself. And I think you make a good point of helping people for free is a really good first step to actually like take all the information and lived experience from your mind and extrapolate it out, get it on paper, put it into a program, or just help somebody through it on a call. That way, you're gonna prove to yourself like, "Oh, I actually do know what I'm doing." And now you get some testimonials, now you have more confidence, and now boom, from there, it's quite a simple path to monetizing so long as you can attract the people. But Kimia, I would love to hear from you as well about your perception on kind of being in the science space, being in the health space. And from my knowledge, you don't have like a MD or a doctorate or a PhD.
Yeah, exactly. So, the story is that when I developed chronic pain, I was 18 years old. And at the time, I was going to college and I was a kinesiology student. I was very interested in in natural medicine and I wanted to become a chiropractor so I could better understand what's going on with my back, with my pain. Well, I ended up dropping out of college and I was a yoga teacher for those periods. I was teaching yoga and meditation and I was working with some chiropractors. Um, but what happened was I had lost trust in even chiropractic itself because, this natural medicine that was out there and you could get educated in. I lost trust in it because really I had spent all this money on chiropractic treatments and like absolutely nothing had helped. And then eventually, I came across this Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. And then I had known about this mind body connection through my studies of yoga and meditation and all these sort of ancient scriptures. But I didn't know there is clinicians and scientists today in the modern world that are studying this deeply and extensively. And so, was doing these things and I was getting better and I was getting significantly better. I was feeling better than I had before I got these symptoms, before I developed these symptoms. And of course, Joe Dispenza does not certify you, and I think he doesn't do it for a good reason. But I was seeing, during these meditations, I was almost uh, viscerally experiencing my brain change in real time. Like there was a tremendous amount of energy moving to my brain. It's almost like regions of my brain that were not being used in the past. Suddenly they were being used and they were growing, and I could feel the different regions of my brain communicate better and become more harmonized. And, it took me a year of consistent practice to recognize that what Joe Dispenza teaches is an exact science. And that's what made me interested in neuroplasticity. I am certified in clinical neuroplasticity and different protocols, different modalities of neuroplasticity, but I didn't know that you could get certified. And when I pursued certification, a whole new world was kind of revealed to me, because all the areas of, uh, you know, being a student of Joe Dispenza, who teaches neuroplasticity, when I pursued these certification programs, I saw that there was a huge body of knowledge that I wasn't receiving in Dr. Joe's classes. So for me, pursuing a certification was a very positive thing, um, because it gave me, first of all, it gave me access to a whole new world. It gave me access to all these researchers and MDs. I, you know, uh, I can basically say that I was trained by, I was trained by these physicians who've been fighting for their whole career for neuroplasticity to become a prominent part of modern medicine. And my timing seems to have been really good, because within the last 3 to 5 years, this science is becoming, peer reviewed, and it's kind of starting to become mainstream. Like, for example, some of the MD, a lot of doctors, a lot of PhDs follow me here on X, and almost all of them know what I'm talking about. Like, Fabiano, the psychiatrist who's on X, he's written several posts on the relationship between the brain and chronic pain, and how neuroplasticity, uh, is a potential, very effective treatment. And so this revolution is kind of unfolding in modern medicine, and it's not a loud revolution. But it's very quiet, and it's moving very steadily and progressively, but it's quiet. A lot of people have no idea it's happening. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm just seeing more and more physicians and MDs who know what we're talking about, and I get to be at the forefront of it. I mean, I get to be kind of colleagues with these MDs now. Uh, uh, we are going to eventually employ these physicians, in our work. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think education and practical knowledge is always valuable. I think certifications, I mean, as long as something is going to give you the confidence that you need to do what you want to do, I think that's really beneficial. But I think if you are going to pursue a certification, you should write simultaneously. You should be producing something, content or a service or a business, simultaneously as doing a certification, because you have to be realistic. No certification has everything you need. No certification can really qualify you into anything. It's your experience, it's what you do with that information that can, that it's like anything else. Like, oh, having a bunch of seeds isn't going to suddenly make you a farmer who can produce a bunch of food. You have to plant that seed, and you have to take care of it, and you have to build around it to be able to produce something valuable out of it. And I think, applied sciences, are the same.
Super valuable insights. Thank you for that, Kimia. Jesse, did you have something to add here?
Yeah, yeah, I really appreciate that perspective from Kimia. A very well-rounded approach to thinking about, how you can enter into the process of helping people out at different levels, and you find out what kind of results you can get for people over time, and the results are your credibility, but also, furthering your education and getting some accreditation sometimes doesn't hurt, does help. So, but I have a fun little anecdote to quickly share. I know that Kimia and Dan both will have to get going soon, so thank you so much to both of you. This has been fantastic. And thanks, Jack. You're an excellent host. I really love your lens of questioning. But I had a lot of trouble with chronic back pain, basically from graduating high school onward. And so, I wish I found people like Kimia earlier, because I had a lot of coping strategies, and I went to a doctor. So this is an anecdote on what Dan said about, sometimes the specialist with the accreditation, the authorized specialist, actually does harm or helps someone less than the person who doesn't have that. So I went to a doctor who gave me a nerve block injection in my back to hopefully just give some relief to the pain after like 10 years of dealing with it. And he put a hole in my lung. The needle poked a hole in my lung and caused a pneumothorax, and I had a chest tube installed for 5 days to let a pocket of air out to prevent my lung from collapsing. One of the more scary experiences in my life. So, what ended up actually healing my back was more so what Kimia is talking about. And doing the inner work and reading from Dr. John Sarno and understanding the emotional underpinnings of what was going on. And it was a process and a lot of work. And then in the creator business space, I was experimenting with web design first, because that's where I solved a problem most confidently. But then when I kind of got success with healing my back pain, I ran this thing, a little program called the Creative Wayfinder. It was really meant to help artists unblock their creative power. But it was kind of like The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. It's kind of a healing experience, by the way, unblocking your creative power. And one guy said after the 8-week program, this elderly man who's a friend of mine, he's like 73 years old. He was dealing with quite a bit of back pain, and he had fallen off a bike recently. By the end of this 8 weeks, he says, Jesse, this pain I've been dealing with for the past couple of years, it's like 90% better. So suddenly I found the results from the work I was doing were confirming that I was able to be of benefit. And so it's just a beautiful thing how the confidence just sort of starts to come based on whatever level you're at, based on whatever level you're able to help people. So yeah, this conversation really helped shed some light and give me some perspective on what that experience was for me and has been for me. So thank you guys for this whole conversation. It's been really helpful for me.
Jesse, I didn't know you had back pain. Um, that's really interesting. I also didn't know you had read John Sarno's work, but yeah, that's wonderful. We basically in this work we do see a lot of people like that. They go to their regular physician and they kind of get worse, or they don't get any better at all. And these are basically the exact people that we can help. And so, if I can pull this off, we are potentially filling a huge gap in the healthcare space. And I'm very, very excited about it. The company that I'm building is called Inherent Health. And we will basically be taking people through the journey of uh, neuroplasticity and healing or regulating their stress response and regulating these bodily sensations that have become chronic. Like it could be any bodily sensation. It could be pain. It could be severe anxiety in the belly. It could be long COVID symptoms. It can be a variety of things, but basically anytime a physician can't find a physical explanation for someone's symptoms, these are the conditions that we can address. So yeah, I'm very excited about it.
Gonna jump in here, guys. This is all beautiful. I got a dash real soon.
Dan, I was actually going to ask you one final question. Maybe you can give us an elevator pitch or a bullet point answer. But First of all, I'm super excited that both of you are going to be speaking at the convention. It's going to be awesome. I'm so excited to listen to you guys and learn from you guys. And I'll be speaking more in a few minutes on what the convention is, where you can find it after we wrap this up here. But I want to pose this question to both you and Kimia here is final piece of advice for people who want to build a spiritually oriented business. If you had to give one thing that pops in your mind that feels highest leverage, most impactful, what would you say?
Start sharing, start writing at the very least, and engage with the people who show any kind of signal of interest. So we don't really think in these terms, we tend to hold the humble like as something that's quite cheap on the internet, but it is a signal of interest. You can see who likes your posts here on X. At least you could see last time I checked. You can certainly see if someone likes a video that you put out on YouTube. Now, on YouTube, there's no DM feature, but do whatever you got to do to follow up with that person. Hey, saw you liked my post. Did you have any reflections on it? And you can start the conversation in that way and just start to get a feel for what are people interested in? What do they find valuable, if anything, in what you're talking about? If they get back to you and they say, I thought your post was trash, I hit the like button by mistake, well, now you know that's a data point, right? That doesn't mean everyone in the world is going to hate what you said, but it's data. So that would be my first encouragement to people. And with that, I'm going to leave you all. You're all beautiful. Kimia, so great to hear you speak on these topics. So wonderful to be with you all. Very, very, very much looking forward to hanging out in 3D at the convention. And we'll talk before then. Love you all. See you soon.
See you, Dan.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Dan. Much love, brother.
From my perspective, um, I would say, um, if you want to build a spiritually oriented business, or you're a spiritual person who wants to share your ideas, I would say, uh, first, there are two components that are really important. First is, of course, communication. You can find any medium of communication. You can find, like, if you're a good speaker, do like talking head videos. If you're a good writer, if you love writing, do writing. I think writing is incredible for having organized thoughts, but it's not absolutely, you don't absolutely have to write in order to produce content. And the second is really try to, whatever it is that you do, whether it's, spirituality could be applied to anything. It could be applied to business. It could be applied to health, relationship, anything. Um, you just want to find a way to solve a real problem for people. And so combining content with solving that tangible problem for people, I think, and also just having no fear, like that's very important. Just have no fear. Just keep doing, keep banging your head against the wall, like keep throwing spaghettis, at the wall and see what sticks. Because trial and error is a huge part of creativity. And like I said earlier in this call, I think failing, rapidly is way better than just like being perfect and not letting yourself make mistakes. Because allowing yourself to make mistakes is actually a really great sign of strength.
Incredible. Thank you for that, Kimia, and thank you for your time and your presence and your insights and your wisdom. They were super valuable. I'm super excited to go deeper into your stuff. Honestly, like I cannot wait to read your Substack. I just signed up for the newsletter. I think I signed up. It's kind of interesting, just to let you know. I went in your bio, I clicked the newsletter, and I tried to click submit, but I don't know for sure if it went through. I clicked join for free. So hopefully it did go through. Um, but I'm really excited to learn more from you and also to hear you speak at the Creator Economy Convention. So if you've been in this space and you like what Kimia is talking about, you like what Dan's talking about, and you're interested more in this space, there is an event that you might be interested in, and it's called the Creator Economy Convention. So this is a 3-day event that's happening in Vancouver, Canada, from June 5th to June 7th of 2026. And there's an entire lineup of speakers like Kimia, like Dan, like myself, and like other notable names in the space who you might know, like Dan Coe, Brian Meyerhofer, Kieran Drew, amongst a handful of others. So if you're interested in that convention, you can check out the link that I have at the top of the space here, or if you're listening on podcast or YouTube, it'll be in the description. And the link is thelivinginternet.com. Now, there will be another discount window to get your ticket at a 40% discount off of the $1,000 ticket price from December 22nd to December 31st. So if you want to go to this event, if you want to get that discount window, make sure you mark it in your calendar. Okay, December 22nd, I know the price is going to be lower. Boom, I'm going to get my ticket then. If you're interested in the event, but you're not sure about coming, or you just want to connect with other creators in the space that are like minded on a similar path to you and open yourself to this luck, expansion, and these networking opportunities, you can also join the free circle community, which is the Living Internet Alliance. And you can also find that community at the same link at thelivinginternet.com. And if you have any questions about the event, feel free to message myself. Feel free to message Jesse, whose social medias will all be linked below in the description as well. And we're super excited for the event and we hope to see you there. Now, before we close off this space, any final ideas, closing comments from Kimia, from Jesse, from Nick, anything else you feel like sharing?
I just wanted to thank you, Jack, for hosting this. You're a great speaker. I really enjoyed the questions and the way you led this space. And yeah, thanks for everybody else who joined in and listened to us. I'm looking forward to connecting with you guys, either online or in person. And if we're gonna be at the convention, I'll be there.
Awesome. Thank you, Kimia. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kimia. It was great spending this time with you. We'll link up again soon. And thanks, everybody. This had me glowing with a smile all morning. It was a lot of fun and so insightful. I'll be listening back on it again myself to write down some notes. So I think Jack covered it. The convention is going to be an absolute blast. And if you're not sure about it yet, jump into the free community. I just dropped the link here. And like he said, there's an invite link on thelivinginternet.com. And we'll be hosting a lot more spaces like this with Jack as host. We'll be hosting some master classes and various kinds of skills trainings, practical skills like web design, as well as softer skills like social skills and sales, as well as simple basic stuff like, okay, if I'm actually building an offer, how do I build a landing page? All that kind of guidance will be there.
Thank you for listening to the Living Internet Alliance podcast. For updates on all future episodes, please subscribe to the channel and share this episode far and wide to other creators who you think would resonate. As a reminder, there is a 50% off discount window for tickets for the Creator Economy Convention in Vancouver from June 5th to June 7th, happening through December 1st. So if you want to come to the convention, if you want to secure your ticket, this will be the lowest price that tickets will ever be available. So you can check out the link below at thelivinginternet.com to buy your tickets and also to join our free circle community. With that, thank you for listening to this episode, and we will see you in the next one.